Hi, friends. Welcome back to Cheering Past Challenges. My name is Rebecca Stewart, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the story of when I was taken away from my mom. So it was the fall of 1989 when I was 7 years old, and my mom started showing signs of psychosis. And my parents were divorced, and my mom was my primary parent and caregiver. And she was slipping into another world. And it started with, you know, the house got messy. She became isolated, kind of the early signs of psychosis. And she got upset with me and she threw away all my textbooks, like just tossed them. She was kind of hysterical. I remember her like running around the house and I've got to do everything. And, I've had similar parenting moments. And let me just be clear, we've all, as moms, freaked out on our kids. Like, I have to clean up after you all the time. Like, that's normal. This was like her in a rampage, and she was out for blood, and she was really not herself. And so she took all my textbooks and tossed them. And so I went to school the next day, and my teacher asked me for my homework. I was in the second grade. Let me be clear, my teacher was amazing. I have recently contacted this teacher because she was such an angel in my life and she was so impressionable. But basically, I had her in first and second grade, and so I really felt like that was one God given thing because she knew my heart. She knew I was a good kid, and she knew my mom, and my mom had an illness. And so I think she had an idea that my mom suffered from mental health issues. So I go to school and I tell her, yep, my mom threw away my textbooks. I don't know. I don't have any homework. And so I think from there on out, she contacted my dad, but it wasn't like instant. Of course, there was at least 2 or 3 days that I had to hang tight with my mom with her being in psychosis. I just remember like being hungry and my mom not really interested in feeding me or eating herself. I remember getting off the bus and walking into our small house and turning into the bedroom, and my mom was sitting on her bed and facing the dresser. And on the top of her dresser was a black AM FM radio. She was getting messages through the radio. She was having a conversation with the radio. And I remember her saying, Becky, it's magic. It's magic 104, and her eyes were like big, like saucers. Okay, mom, that's great. But can we go eat now? I'm hungry. And she just stayed glued on her bed and she wouldn't leave the radio. And so I just remember like going, like helping myself into the kitchen and opening the refrigerator and just smelling rotting food. Okay, what am I going to eat? And I think I found like a piece of cheese that was still intact or something. It seems to me that around that time too, my mom would make a big pot of pea soup. And when we would eat that for like 8 days in a row. And still to this day, I cannot eat pea soup. There's no way. The other thing I cannot eat is powdered milk. So, we were on food stamps. And for some reason, when you're on food stamps, they give you powdered milk. I don't know why. It's the most disgusting thing ever. Again, something I can never drink again in my life, but I digress. That was what was happening in terms of she was no longer feeding me. There was no longer any food in the house. And I just remember being really concerned about her. I also recall stepping into a caregiver role where I was going to make her better by making her a cup of coffee and offering her food. And I remember on the stove, we had this like little mini percolator, and I dumped a bunch of Folgers coffee into it and made this horrible coffee on the stove. And looking back on that, guys, I was 7. I could have burned the place down. But anyway, she didn't want the coffee. And I remember just feeling so heartbroken. Like, what happened to my mom? Where is she? And that's the thing, is that she looked like my mom and she sounded like my mom. But when she actually talked and her mannerisms, and it was like zombie like, and she was very frightening. It wasn't long after that, one afternoon, my dad pulled up in the driveway in his pickup truck. I remember looking out the window. I don't even think there was a fight because I think my mom was beyond gone. And so he got me out of the house and he drove me to her parents' house about a couple hours drive away. And at that point, My dad was my dad, but he was like the guy that took me to the park once a month and took pictures of me. He might have had like a weekend stay, I might have had an overnight weekend like once a month or even less than that. He was running his own business and I don't know. Like there's a lot that I don't know, but I'd be willing to bet that even though my mom was mentally off, she was still the mother. And even to this day, the court system will favor for the mother with children. And so I think that's why I went to my grandma's, her parents, because that was still technically under her care. But I lived there for about, I don't know, 3, 4 months. And I remember my dad mailing my homework to me and just having stacks and stacks of workbooks. I was a pretty good kid. I liked school and I think I did it, but I think I got bored. And I can remember like my mom's parents were elderly. They had already raised 7 of their own children, of which 2 had schizophrenia. So they were probably just enjoying retirement, and here I am, and they never seemed upset by it. They were loving. They opened up their home to me, but where it all went down was they were Catholic and they raised my mom and her siblings in the Catholic education. Now, I was used to public school. So, as you know, that's quite different. And I remember my grandma and her sister taking me to the local Catholic school, and I got a tour of the school. And I remember being terrified. It looked to me like a prison. It was dark in there. It was dingy. The walls were green, and they had the old clocks from 1950, and it just felt really scary to me. And I remember going into the office where the priest was, and we got to meet the priest who was like the principal. And I'll never forget it because I was such a shy kid. I really was. I was a shy pleaser. I was an over pleaser. Still am dealing with that. I'm just an adult now. But I remember sitting very politely, like at in the chair, and almost feeling nervous because it's like that level of authority. It's a priest, and he's like the principal, and now the priest is like looking at me and saying, "Oh, Becky looks so like such a nice girl and this should be fine. But I just have to ask, how long will she be living with you? Because I don't want her to come and enroll here and make friends and then say her mother gets out of the hospital and wants her back." And my grandma says, "Oh, at least another 3 months." And then her sister chimes in and had an opinion and she said, "No, no, no, priest, father, whatever. No, father, it's going to be at least 6 months." He says, "Okay, excellent." And he looked down at me and he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "My daddy's picking me up tomorrow." But I didn't know that. I mean, the reality was I hadn't talked to my dad in months. And I remember getting home and my grandma was flustered from that. And then I remember walking into the living room where the phone was because they had one phone that was really up high, like on a dresser type, wooden table. And I remember that I couldn't reach it. So I got the little stool and I pulled it over and I went up and it was one of those old rotary telephones, the one that push down and it curls back. I dialed my dad's number and I said, "Dad, I need you to come and get me." And he did the next day. And that's a true story. Interesting now talking about it because I don't think my dad was a bad dad. I think my dad was not used to being the primary parent, and he was probably treading lightly because of my mom and maybe didn't want to upset my mom. But when he heard me say, "Dad, you need to come and get me. I want to come home," he did right away. And so I'm really grateful to that, even though our relationship hasn't been perfect. And there are parts of it that have been challenging. I still to this day love my dad and am very appreciative that he came right away. He heard the call, he came and got me. And he did go to court and he got full custody of me and kept me until I was 18. So thank you for listening to this emotional story. I feel emotional talking about it because after I was taken out and then ultimately lived with my dad, I never let go of the feeling of loss of missing out on having a mom. My dad ended up remarrying and I was given a stepmom later that, it's nothing like having a mom, no matter how good she may have been to me, and no matter the fact that my physical needs were taken care of in terms of having shelter and having a bed to sleep in and things like that. I never got used to the fact of not having my mom in my life. When she got out of the mental ward and she went to a halfway house, she never fully returned to me. And each hospitalization, she's kind of gone a little bit away. And then every once in a while, like even now in her 70s, she'll come back a little bit and I'll get a little bit of her spark and I'll be like, oh, there's my mom. Every once in a while, she reveals herself to me, or I'll have like a moment with her and I'll be like, yes, I still have a mom. She's still here. But just looking back on that time, I have other videos where I talk about what a good mom she was and how present she was. And then to be robbed of that because of mental illness is a harsh reality, but it's what happened. And I will, as an adult, doesn't matter how old I will get, I will never stop yearning for a mother's love. And I will never stop wishing for more connection with my mom and more opportunities to love on her and let her love on me. And that has been the most challenging thing of this whole journey of loving someone with schizophrenia and loving somebody with a disability that needs help and needs family and needs all of that. And so, in the end, I'm still that little child inside that desperately wants a mom to snap out of her psychosis and be like, "Oh, thank you. You made me coffee. I love you." It didn't happen. And I think I kind of understood that it wasn't her fault. Like I knew she was sick. I'm never going to be able to really fully articulate how much that impacted me and my personality because, like I said, I am a people pleaser and I go out of my way for people and I love helping others. But on some level, I too have to kind of look at it from a bird's eye perspective that I can't be everything to everyone. And I think it's really healthy and good to understand that in life we all have limitations. And what I really take away from this lesson of being taken away from my mom is that I am best not to focus on that, but I am better off focusing on what I do have and practicing gratitude. Maybe I don't have a mom that's ever going to take me shopping, but I have this little sweet puppy that just loves me no matter what. It's just being grateful for what I do have. And I want you to know I'm grateful for you for watching this video and learning an intimate piece about my life. And I'm happy to share it. And I hope that it blessed you. And I hope that if you are struggling with loving someone, loving a parent that wasn't able to take care of you, it's okay. It's shaping you into who you need to be. God is using our shortfalls for good. He's using some of these hard things for good. I truly believe that I'm a better individual because of what happened to me. I believe I'm more compassionate. I believe that I am more resilient. And those are things that you cannot read out of a book to learn. You have to go through it. So, thank you for listening. God bless you.